Welcome, everybody, to this week, and what a week it has been. Holy banana bread. So, it has been a fantastic week. A lot has happened, and this could be the week. Maybe it is that not a lot's happened in the world of Elon Musk. So, we're going to have to see. We will find out, of course, as we go along. So, I want to start the show off with a little bit of crypto news just to get ourselves rolling as people are sort of trudging in and remembering it's like, oh, yeah, that Sunday afternoon live stream is starting. Maybe I should start tuning into the YouTuber or the YouTube, not really so much the YouTuber. So, crypto. So, we had some interesting news. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit about Celsius here in a moment. But before we get to Celsius, with the trend that's been happening in crypto, the complete collapse with a lot of exchanges going down, the regulators over in Europe, so security regulators, have come out and they have actually taken a stance on it. Because one of the concerns that they have is that you've got a lot of people out there who are basically unsecured investors who are pretty much saying, well, what about our money? Are we going to get this money back? What's going on? So what they've actually come out and they have said is that they said, well, when it comes to bailing out people who got in trouble with some of these exchanges, there's pretty much no chance they're going to help out. And they said that what you should do is how you should view it is you should view it as, well, a cautionary lesson all about crypto. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Now the freaking Oracle made it in this week. Last week he was doing yard work and he's making bank on ETH. Yes, ETH has broken out. So those of you who are still high on the ETH, this is looking like a pretty good weekend for you. And hello, Tim. And hello, Redbeard. Of course, every time I say Redbeard, I want to tell a pirate joke, and I don't know why. Well, it's probably easy to figure that out. So here's an interesting thing. Let's talk a tiny bit on the bearish side about Bitcoin while ETH is pumping. There was a survey done. It was done by MILV Pulse Survey. There we go. ARG. Got to pull this up. ARG. And the freaking Oracle brings in exchanges insurance is only about 200K. Yeah, and that's some of these exchanges, but we're going to talk about that here in just a moment. I just want to get past this survey. So this MILV Pulse survey, they basically surveyed a whole bunch of Wall Street investors to ask them about Bitcoin. And 60% of investors are saying Bitcoin is not done falling and that they believe it's going to go all the way down to about 10K. And I think that there's a better chance of it going to 10K than for it to rebound and get back up to 30K. So whether that's true or not, I don't know. I actually thought that worst case scenario, the bottom would be around 12K. But right now, Bitcoin seems to be very happy with sticking out around 20K and moving, for the most part, sideways. But it could be a long bear market. There's probably a bigger chance of us going down than up. One of the big things, and I think this was brought up a little bit on Crypto Night in Canada or the Danter Banter on Wednesday, is that money is just gone. When you look at you look at the 2 trillion market cap that we've lost, that money is gone. Where we, to get back to some of the all-time highs, we need a massive amount of infusion of money. It's not going to come from retail. Retail does not have it. The only possible chance, of course, is with your institutional investors. And I kind of have to ask, do we want Bitcoin going back up right now? Do we want to see a rise in glory? I'm going to say no. And I'll tell you why I'm saying no. Why we kind of wanted to hang out in the doldrums for a while. There's a lot of bad exchanges out there, and we're going to get to Celsius, that they're sort of showing their true colors when it comes to the way they've been handling your money through loaning it. And then how they're handling it now that they've gotten themselves into trouble, whether it's a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, such as with Celsius. So in a sense, if we keep Bitcoin low for a while, one, it's a great opportunity to get into dollar cost average. But two, it gives us a chance to start to shake up this infrastructure. And maybe, and some of you are going to say, no, Candace, you're absolutely 1,000,000,000% wrong. But maybe it'll give some time for a little bit of regulation to get in there to protect people. So that way these exchanges can't sort of go all, well, the way they've been going bottom up right now. So I'd like to see just a little bit of regulation. I don't want to see like vast swathing of regulation, but certainly just some basic regulatory framework. I also want to see more stricter rules on these exchanges. That's kind of, and I know that goes against the whole decentralization, but I think that we have to be able to hold exchanges accountable, because we don't need to see massive rug pulls like we've seen recently, because that's just absolutely crazy. Now, I'm curious to know what you guys think about that. So, throw that in the chat. I'll jump over to that as soon as I see something. While I'm waiting for your opinions, let's talk a tiny bit about Celsius. So, the writing's been on the wall for a lot of these exchanges for a long time. I know about 3-4 weeks ago on Crypto Night in Canada, I was warning, and everybody's been sort of following the same thing, but we've been warning as a collective that, get off these exchanges. If you're in these situations with these high interest rates, it's just not sustainable, and you don't want to lose your money, because here's what happens. And we're going to see this with Celsius, because Celsius now has gone into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So it's a pretty serious thing. Now, they, of course, they try to spin it positive, saying, well, while through the whole process, we're going to try to restructure and, maybe come back eventually stronger than we were before. Well, here's the process. Obviously, we began by freezing everybody's withdrawals, everybody's activity on that network. And then at that point, now that they've officially gone into Chapter 11, this is where the courts get involved. So the first thing that's going to happen, when the courts are going to start looking at customer complaints, and they're going to look at the money that Celsius owes people, but not people initially. So initially, they're going to look at more or less, they're going to look at the businesses, they're going to look at the larger institutions that are involved with Celsius, that Celsius owes money to. If you're just a regular Joe and you had all your Bitcoin over in Celsius, you're what's known as a unsecured creditor. So here's the sad truth about an unsecured creditor, is that when they're paying off all of the big boys, so when the big boys team is being paid off, if they run out of money to do that, they can use your money. They can just take your money, it's gone forever, and they can pay it off. Now, if they do have money left over after they pay off all of the big boys, well, you might see something, but chances are, this is the way I would look at it, is count that money is gone. And if by some miracle something does come back to you, then it will be a bit of a blessing. And now Jungle Lady says, I'm cryptophobic. I'll stick to the markets. I understand. Absolutely understandable. There's money to be made in every type of market. And sometimes you don't have to be a jack of all trades, but be good at what you do. So I know, for example, the friggin' Oracle simply loves crypto, and he's good at it. He's good with the altcoins. He does some amazing things, hence the name Oracle. Whereas Jungle Eddie loves his stocks, and that's absolutely perfect, because there's a big enough world and opportunity within just the stock market alone to make a whole banana bread boat full of money. So it comes down to what you're comfortable with. You don't have to be a master of everything, but find your niche and be really good at that. And, and you'll do well, which I think is really, really good. The freaking article says if they listed as an LLC, it leaves the company not responsible. Yeah, definitely a good thing. And hello, Simply No Name. That is cool. I don't know what to call you. I guess I can call you No Name, but so that's just one of those big things. And it's really funny. Little quick saving tip. While the economy is in the doldrums and while prices are going through the roof, don't forget those No Name products. And that's why I thought of it, because of Simply No Name. Here's this thing. Even if we're not in bad times, when you look at the Advil, for example, and then you look at like the Life brand generic, ibuprofen. Look at the active ingredients. Look at the amount of the active ingredients, and you'll see it's the exact same thing. So why pay $1 more just to have a box that says Advil on it when you've got the exact same product to do the exact same thing? So that's just one of them little things. And it's funny. If I were to give you the Life brand, and if I were to give you the Advil, and you tried them, you're probably going to swear that the Advil did a better job. And the reason for that is because when you see that brand name, you've had it drilled into you that it's a good product. So it creates a little bit of a placebo effect. But if I took those same 2 pain medications and I, did what's called a blind test, where we gave you one and then we gave you the other, but you didn't know which one was which, you would probably 50% of the time, you'd probably say the Advil did better. 50% of the time, the generic No Name. So save yourself some money. There's a lot of No Name stuff out there that is exactly the same as the brand name, and you're going to save yourself a few dollars. And these are dollars that can go into investing. So when you're thinking about nickel and diming, I know a lot of people in the community, they talk about, well, okay, like I'll give up this bad habit or that bad habit, which is fantastic, and absolutely I recommend that. But there's other ways to generate more nickels and more dimes and get that all into the system, because it all adds up. And with Wealthsimple, this is the beautiful thing. With Wealthsimple and fractional investing, you can actually go in and invest a quarter if you really want to. That's kind of a neat thing. If you save a quarter, throw it on Wealthsimple. So that, I think, is really, really, really good. All right. And Simply No Name, what is your opinion about STPT coin? I honestly don't have an opinion on that coin right now, but I think part of it is, and I'll be very honest, my crypto, I love crypto. I've diversified well into crypto at one point, but back around January, I could see this coming. So I pulled everything out of every single coin and moved it all to Bitcoin, because in a bear market, sometimes you don't know which coins are still going to be here on the other end. I was a huge proponent to Polkadot, for example, and I still believe in Polkadot, but I'm not 100% sure. I can't say. Whereas Bitcoin, I feel a lot more safe in Bitcoin for the time being. So that's where all of my crypto currently sits, is in Bitcoin right now. I'll reevaluate it on the other side once crypto winter is over. And you know what? Here's this thing. There are going to be opportunities in crypto that I'm going to miss. Absolutely. And I don't mind missing them, because I would rather miss 100 fantastic opportunities than jump on a single rug pull. So that's kind of the way I look at it. And that's where I'm standing. Now, it's okay if you have high conviction in a coin and you do want to hold it, that's fine. It just means that your conviction's a tiny bit higher than mine. And, I'm not always right. I could very well be wrong. Maybe something like Polkadot, which I love, maybe it's going to do really good. And maybe if I just left my money in Polkadot, I might be better off on the other side. But the whole point is, I'm not worried about the Bitcoin. even when Bitcoin does fantastic falling, it's not going into my mind that, oh, it's just going to go to zero. I'm going to lose everything. I don't think that way. I just look at it this way. Oh, I can buy more. That's how I look at it with Bitcoin. So KMV agreed. Even some extended health insurance companies will only cover the generic type of a prescription medication. Yeah, absolutely. And that to me is fantastic. I mean, people love paying a lot more for stuff than they have to. And sometimes it's just appearance. Like if you're sitting there with your with your A&W root beer in your hand. I'll use this as a prop. With your this isn't root beer, but let's say it was. With your A&W root beer in your hand, people are like, oh, yeah, I love A&W. Or if you're sitting there with your RC Cola root beer, people are not, well, in your mind, you're going to be like, oh, people are going to think like I'm poor or something. It's exactly the opposite. That person drinking the RC Cola or the RC root beer, they're probably paying for that can. They might be paying 50 cents for that can, while the person with the A&W root beer or the Hires root beer, they're probably paying like, more than $1 for that can. So it adds up. And that's the whole thing. If you want to be wealthy, you need to come up with that wealthy mindset. So you need to sort of begin to say, okay, do I want to look rich or do I want to be rich? Those are two totally different things. You can look rich. Absolutely. You may have to run up your credit card to do it. You may end up killing your finances to do it. But yeah, you'll be walking down that street and people will be like going, oh, look, there's a rich person. The funny thing is, though, you turn the wrong alley and someone goes to rob you and they find out you've got no money. That may not end well for you. But, if you just look like a regular person, you're just buying, buy the stuff for functionality. That's how I look at it. Like, obviously, I'll pay a little more for a shirt if I know it's going to last twice as long as a cheap shirt. Just as an example, but I always try to boil things down to the economics of it all, because I think that is really where you need to go. And, I tend to be a little bit of a financial minimalist. Like, it's one of these things, like if you ever watch Graham Stephan, sometimes I see some of the cheap things he does, and sometimes I think he's overemphasizing them for a laugh, but at the same time, I'm like, I do that. But it's just one of those things. I would rather make my own coffee at home, for 25 to 30 cents than, go to Tim Hortons. Although I do like Tim Hortons, I do like Starbucks, and anytime somebody wants to buy me some of those, I'm like, sure, absolutely. But when it comes to my own money, I'm just like, I can make a really good coffee at home. And sometimes if I'm going someplace, I'll make a coffee and I'll just drag, I'll drag my big cup here. Now the green screen started doing things to it, but I'll drag that with me because it can hold it. I used to have, when I used to work I used to work in a print shop, and I used to, for the whole day, I brought a giant thermos that I made every morning of coffee because, but then again, I used to also get a lot of free stuff because people used to love my customer service. Like they'd come in and I'd help them with some stuff. Maybe I'd, rearrange some photos for them and things like that. And they'd be like, oh, can I give you a gift card for Tim's? I'm like, sure. Because, we weren't allowed to accept cash, but the customers figured that out pretty quickly. And so they just knew that they could give us, as tips, they could give us gift cards. So I had a lot of, I think I still have money left on Tim Hortons gift cards right now that I just haven't used, because now that my studio is in the house, I don't get to leave as much. It's one of those funny things about a lot of YouTubers is a lot of YouTubers are almost recluses because, their studio may be in their house and they're doing all their work and their research. So they don't get out as much as they would like to. But okay, so that was crypto. Wow. We just went off on a huge giant tangent. But that to me is cool. That's kind of what it's interesting when I think about what this program is about. Yeah, I bring up news, I bring up some of the current events. But those are more or less just stepping points for conversation. The more thing is about what we want to talk about as a group, as a community, what type of information I want to, but communication, what type of stuff you guys want to talk about. And that's why I love it. Like a question, comments, when you guys are hitting that up in the chat, it's sending me off on tangents. And we want me to go off on a tangent because to me, that's entertainment, right? Like me just telling you guys the news. You can just Google the news, right? You just pull up, there's 100,000 probably different news things you could have emailed to you. So the whole idea here is, we're using the news as a vehicle just to create some conversation, to create some tangents, to create some memorable moments, to make things, make your Sunday afternoon a little bit more entertaining, hopefully. But anyway, that's kind of the whole object of this. All right. Now that we went off on I have never to date had the first topic go 21 minutes. So that's kind of funny. And we haven't even talked about any of the big news yet. But I kind of thought too, and I was thinking before this started that, the PPI information, the Bank of Canada rate hikes, this is stuff you guys have heard from every direction, left, right, and center. So they're going to color some of the things that we're going to talk about today, but I don't think they're center stage today. I think they're kind of more or less that ominous background that hangs over everything, that and the recession, of course. All right, let's talk a little bit about EV cars. Curious question. Do any of you guys own an EV car? I honestly don't know. I don't even think I know anybody who has an EV car. So, holler me up if you own an EV car. And if you're watching this on the replay, hit the comments and let me know, because I would love to talk to one of you. And you know what? Here's the thing. If any of you have an EV car and want to maybe come on to the live stream for like a 10, 15 minute segment in the future, I would love, as long as you're not camera shy, I'd love to have a quick conversation with you about your experience with an EV car, because you never know, maybe that will convince some other folks to jump in on one. Oh, there we go. KMV has one on order. Is it a Tesla? And that's my big question. Now, speaking of Tesla, something interesting has happened in China. So there's a car company in China called BYD, which basically stands for Build Your Dreams. They're out of Shenzhen, wherever that is in China. I'm not 100% sure where Shenzhen is. But here is what happened. In the first 6 months of this year, they delivered 641,000 electric vehicles. That's interesting because it has surpassed Tesla. Tesla has only delivered 564,000 electric vehicles in the first half of this year. And just very quickly, so yes, no, not a Tesla. It's a Hyundai Ioniq 5. Probably won't get delivery until next year. I love the Tesla, though. Yeah, I think everybody loves the Tesla. But here's this interesting thing. So BYD, they beat Tesla, and they only sold within China. So they are not yet out and about. But that's one of their goals. They are looking to move beyond China. And this could be a company to watch when they do become global. And I'll tell you why. Some of their battery technologies have allowed them to have some lower end EV vehicles. Their lower end vehicle sells for $20,000 US. So that's not too bad. And Jungle Eddie says, it is not cost effective for me. I would love to have one, but I can't buy a gas car and 10 years worth of gas for the price of an EV equivalent. Okay, that's fair enough. Definitely fair enough. And that's the thing. I think, EV is going to come down, as mass production always brings the price down. Now, Speaking, of course, of EV, I thought BYD was in Australia. Maybe they have ventured into Australia, but I was told, at least I was told when I was doing my research, that they were primarily in China. So I know they do want to branch, and they may have already started to branch into Australia. If they have, that's fantastic. But they are a Chinese company out of Shenzhen. Okay, so the federal government is looking to pump 16.1 million towards a goal of 50,000 operable charging stations. So that's a huge, huge goal. They want 50,000 charging stations. Their goal is by 2026 to have all of these charging stations. Now, Shell has taken some of that money, and they have pledged, they have pledged 79 stations on the Trans-Canada Highway by the end of this year. So that's huge. Right now, when you look at Canada, we've got about 16.5 thousand active stations, but they're not spread out evenly. There's a lot of them in Quebec and Ontario, but a lot of places, if you have an EV car and you're looking for a station, sometimes you may have some difficulty when you're outside of Ontario and Quebec. So that's one of those things. If Canada wants to start moving people towards EV vehicles, well, we obviously need to have the stations in there. People need to be able to charge up their vehicles. Otherwise, they're just simply not practical. Now, an interesting statistic out of the US. So according to some stats I was looking at, 5% of new car sales this year in the US are electric. So that's huge for the US market. 5% is not too shabby. Now, if they follow the same trajectory as other cars in other countries, they're predicting that we could be looking at 25% of cars in the US, new cars, being electric by 2025. So that could be interesting. So the reason is on. Now, there is also the American Auto Association, so the AAA, they did a survey of their users asking them if their next car is going to be an electric vehicle. And they had 25% of American respondents saying yes. They're looking at a EV car for their next purchase. The number one reason they got back was because of the exorbitant high fuel costs. So that tends to be one of the driving forces in the US. So pretty interesting. So a little bit about EVs. And I'll break the news right now. I don't have any Elon news this week. The fact that China beat Tesla is as close as I have. Now, yes, there is Twitter drama, but that drama started last week. So that was with last week's news. So this week is our first week where Elon Musk is banana bread free. Nothing. Okay. Now, Google. We've got some Google news for you. So the U.S., we got some issues with Google. So the U.S. Department of Justice is currently investigating some allegations against Google. And the allegations are basically that Google is being very forceful in their role with ads. So in buying and selling of ads. And so this is starting to become an issue. And there's a lot of people complaining about it. Now, Google already kind of saw this coming. So they're already thinking about, well, how can we, not run into an antitrust suit? So what Google has actually done is they have said, look, if you want, we'll split our ad department into two separate companies, both, of course, under the Alphabet umbrella. So it's still all under Google. But that way there, people can sort of get through one without having to deal with the other. And it's kind of a little bit of a mess. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. Now, you have to realize, and this is why it's a big deal. The reason it's a really big deal for Google is that 12% of Alphabet's overall revenue comes from ads. So it is a huge deal for them. 14% of your revenue is big. So that's one of the reasons. I know they had some issues in Europe, and Google tried to get ahead of that, and I believe they were successful. So you want to watch big companies like that. They will do some dancing. So it'll be interesting to see where this story goes. Now Andrew says, I am not sure if EVs are going to work in very cold weather like Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Well, that would be interesting. But keep in mind, though, I imagine with an EV vehicle, you're probably going to do the same thing in the winter, where you'll probably plug it in, very much like you do now. Like, I know when I lived in Calgary, the parking lot in the building that I lived in had plugs for every single vehicle, so you could plug in your block. Otherwise, you'd have difficulty in like minus 40 trying to get it started. So now I don't know enough about EV vehicles when it comes to that level, if whether or not you could just sort of plug them in like that to try to do that in cold weather. But I have a feeling with the government wanting us to move in that direction, we're going to be finding out pretty soon whether these EV vehicles are compatible with that really, really, really cold prairie winters. Because, yeah, it is definitely freezing in the prairies. But it's a different type of cold. That's what they'll say. That was Google. Tiny tidbit on Air Canada. I was just looking at Air Canada the other day, and I noticed that their stock so far in 2022 has fallen by roughly 23% in the last 3 months. They have fallen big time. So people are always asking, like, I hear this a lot, when is a good time to buy Air Canada? And I keep looking at the prices, and I'm like, oh, this is an amazing price. This is an amazing price. Under $20, oh yeah, you got to buy it. But I don't know. There are so many issues going on right now that I think they could be down for a while. So I don't think we're yet at that point. Now, if you have high conviction on Air Canada's future, then what you should be doing anyway is dollar cost averaging anyway. So it doesn't matter when that bottom is in. But Air Canada for me has always been more of a swing trade opportunity when, not so much anymore, but I've always sort of that's how I've used Air Canada in the past, is more for swing trading than anything else. And according to the friggin' Oracle, they suck. They keep ice on the hood. Hood's not heated. Oh, so the hood is not heated. Okay. Well, and that's the thing. These electric vehicles are fairly new to the market. So this is the type of feedback I think that a lot of the electric vehicle manufacturers will have to start taking into account. Do we need to heat the hood, or what do we need to do? Because it sounds to me like if the hood's completely frozen, it would kind of suck if you'd have to chip ice off your hood too before you. Well, we're in Canada. Here's my solution to everything. Get a garage. That's a terrible solution, but it works. Yeah. I've seen some pretty bad scraping when I lived with my mom. We had to scrape her school bus in the morning because she's a school bus driver. And getting the snow off the top of that thing, like you had this big, long, huge telescopic pole that would come up to get off the snow off the top of the school bus. So, yeah, it's Canada, right? We should all be used to this weather, unless any of you are brand new to Canada and you haven't yet experienced Canadian winter. In that case, fasten your seatbelts. It's coming in a few months or so. So Air Canada. So tech, of course, has been struggling this year. We've all known about that. And there's been a lot of layoffs. Well, the layoffs have finally hit Microsoft. So Microsoft is looking to cut about 1% of their workforce. That's not huge, mind you. But it just shows even companies that you get the feeling are too big to fail are also being affected by the things that are going on. But now, speaking of Microsoft, Microsoft is now getting into I don't want to say getting into bed, but now getting into a little collaboration with Netflix. So you've probably heard with Netflix, Netflix is in trouble. They're down 70%. Their stock price, 70%. Just let that sink in for a second. That's a lot. And so what they want to do is they're looking at ways to keep subscribers, and they're having a hard time. So they're looking at a ad version of Netflix, and they have now teamed up with Microsoft to make that happen. And the reason they chose Microsoft is one of the big tech giants who don't already have a streaming type service attached to them. So that's kind of the reason that they went with that. So that's going to be interesting to see how that all turns out. Yay! I made it to your live stream. Woohoo! Mountain of Inspiration. He has a fantastic channel. I love his channel. So guys, check him out on YouTube. He has a lot of very inspirational stories and very animated dude too. So pretty cool. BYD has electric buses in Toronto and Brampton. Well, they probably do. Because when I was talking about the company, I was talking about the EV part of them. So I imagine that they have a few other things that are starting to follow. But it's interesting. I'd still say BYD, they're going to be a company to watch. So, that is cool. Hello, host. Thumbs up, done. Yeah, so as Mountain of Inspiration says, let's inspire the YouTube algorithm by clicking on like. And of course, if you haven't yet hit subscribe, hit that subscribe button, dudes and folks and people. It's absolutely free, and it helps out the channel a ton, which is always good. And say, getting into bed with Netflix. The problem with Netflix is simple. Content is great, but their pricing is off. Yeah, exactly. That is exactly what it's all boiling down to. And that's why I don't know what the pricing is going to look like on the ad version. Here's the thing, though. I was thinking about this yesterday. Currently binge watching The Umbrella Academy. So it's like at the end of each episode, you hit the skip and you go right into the next episode. But do you remember the old days when there were commercials? It's like, you could go to the bathroom or, sure, you could hit pause, but if you're watching with somebody else, you're kind of annoying them sometimes if you're hitting pause, but there used to be that natural break sometimes. And sometimes I do miss that a little bit. But at the same time, I do love binging. So when I get the chance, I don't have a lot of time to binge, but yesterday was a binge day. I think I watched 4 episodes and built a cabinet for the bathroom. So, and here's the funny thing. Once I discovered that you can actually get a power screwdriver, like it's a screwdriver thing, like a drill with a screwdriver in it that has power. Once I discovered that, I was like, okay, I don't mind building furniture anymore. But quite literally, halfway through, my battery died, and the other battery wasn't fully on the charger the right way, so it was dead. And I just got to a part where I had to screw in 24 screws to put the backing on, and I was like, oh. So yeah, I had to do that by hand. Anyway, that's kind of a fun thing. Now, one of the interesting things about this time of year, too, is we get a lot of earnings reports coming out as we move into the third quarter. And this week, there was a couple that came out. Pepsi. So PepsiCo came out with their earnings. I'm going to learn how to talk. I'll take some courses. Do they still have that hooked with phonics? Maybe that would help me. So they have reported record earnings. Their revenue was $20.23 billion, and they were only projected to be at $19.51 billion. So they have, of course, Delta Airlines was an interesting one. So their earnings came out. Now they were projected to make $1.73 billion. They fell short. They came in at 1.4. Sorry. Whoa, I'm looking at the wrong information. Okay. Forget the last 5 minutes. We'll just time travel backward. So their revenue was up. So they were projected to make $13.57 billion, but they came in at $13.82 billion. Now, those other numbers I was throwing at you were actually their EPS. So their EPS was forecast to come in at 1.73, but it fell short to 1.44. Now, the reason that their revenue was up while their earnings per share was down, well, most of it was basically inflation pricing. So inflation has helped them a little bit, but it's hurt them too. So kind of a shaky earnings call on their part. And I think most of the airlines are going to be in trouble for a while. Now, another interesting thing too this week, have you guys heard about the euro? So the euro has dropped 12% in value this year. That's huge. That's a lot. In fact, it has now reached parity with the US dollar because the US dollar has been surging, the euro has been falling, and they're sort of passing on the way. Hi. This hasn't happened in more than 2 decades, just to give you an idea. It's not a thing that happens very often, but a lot of this is that when we talk about the rate hikes that have happened over in the US and in Canada, of course, a lot of Europe have been late coming to the game on some of these rate hikes, and economists are saying that a lot of this decline in the price of the euro is because they were too late starting on the rate hikes. So maybe if they get very aggressive in Europe with rate hikes, they might be able to get themselves back up above the US dollar. But right now, the US dollar seems to be unstoppable, which is kind of weird. But there's a lot of factors behind that. Now, okay. One last thing before we move to the next topic is the other big reason too for the euro having issues is there's a lot of fear in Europe in regards to Russia and their oil. So Russia did, as I mentioned last week, Russia turned off that natural gas pipeline into Germany for 10 days of maintenance. And there are thoughts that it's not going to come back on. So the fear in Germany, that's what led to Germany asking Canada to release those turbines to Russia because, they don't want to give Russia any excuse at all to not turn it back on. Canada said yes, and then the Ukraine got really mad at Canada, but it's one of those things that happens. So it's kind of where you have, by helping one friend, you're going to hurt another. So it's difficult thing to deal with right now. But here's the issue too, is that I think when we went heavy sanction, when the world, like all the Western world, went heavy sanctions on Russia, we all thought that this war was going to be a shorter thing. And now we're kind of getting to the point where we realize this is going to be a long-term thing. And there's even been indications that Russia is only just warming up and that, the war is getting ready to, move into the next phase, which is going to be, probably more devastating for the people of Ukraine, unfortunately. But it's going to be very, very interesting, I think. And damn it, never got a notification. Going to have to check your VOD later. Oh, there you go. So just check the VOD later. It's always good to see you, Jordan. Jordan always has good questions. 10 days of maintenance. These politicians have an interesting sense of humor. I agree. I think in some sense, I think on Russia's side, it's like, it's a strategic thing. It's like, okay, you know what? Well, let's do it. Let's put this 10 days of maintenance on and see what happens. Hike up the fear, and maybe Russia might be like, it's taking a bit longer. I can't do a Russian accent. I tried. Forget that I tried that. Remove that from your memory. Trust me, you don't want nightmares about me speaking with a Russian accent. So that's kind of where Russia's going with this. They may extend it. I would not be surprised. Maybe Germany's right. Maybe they won't turn it back on. It's hard to say. It's going to be the situation where I know there's been talk about, well, we can accept some trade supplies from Russia, but they can only come by railroad. And so there's been a few different little things I've heard floating around. So I think the longer this goes, the more you'll get a little bit of cracks. I think you'll see some cracks in some of these sanctions. You got winter coming, I know right now, hey, we're in the midst of summer, but 3 months from now, people will start to be thinking about winter big time. And, do you want to continue sanctioning Russia, or do you want maybe a little bit of heat? Those are going to be the type of questions that are going to start popping up. So we will have to see how that all goes. Oh, bye-bye, user. There we go. Holy banana bread. That one was kind of obtrusive. I feel a little bit dirty just having that person in my chat room, but that's probably because I'm from Nova Scotia. Not to say that everybody in Nova Scotia is as clean cut as I am, but no, probably not. I just come from one of them families where, you just don't swear and all of that fun stuff. Okay. So now groceries. I want to move into groceries. So the Toronto Star did a very interesting investigation into 3 of the major chains. And what they discovered is that all 3 of the major chains they looked at reported profits. Extra, like we're talking record profits, gains. So the profits basically outpaced inflation. And let me give you an idea of these profits. So Loblaws reported 21% increase in their profits. Sobeys 27% and Metro 15%. So we're looking at a situation where the stores are, they're increasing their prices higher than inflation. They're making extra profits while people are, making choices. Hey, what food can I not get this week? What food can we skip this week? Hey, kids, have you heard of fasting? These are the things. These are real things that are happening. Perhaps not so much the fasting thing. I hope not. But you got these stores that are making profits and their excuse. So the grocer says that, oh, well, the way we raise our prices is we look and see what the other person's doing. And then we raise our prices to match them. So they're pretty much saying that that it's more of a blind profiteering situation. Yeah, that's ridiculous. So hopefully having that brought into the light of day, maybe smartens them up a little bit, especially when people are struggling. That's not the time to be making profits at their expense. That's the time to be giving people a break. Not just doing your part by saying, oh, we put a box out that people can throw food in for the food bank. That should be enough, right? No, it's not even close to enough. So yeah, if you're running a business and people are hurting, don't be making profits on their expense. Simple as that. Anyway, but that's what's been going on with that. Now, a couple other little things here. We're slowly getting to that point. The whole big interest rate hike. So with us going up 100 basis points, we knew that was going to filter over to the banks. So the banks, all 6 of them, the big 6, they have all increased their prime lending rate up to 4.7%. So people are paying a lot more for interest. Now, interestingly enough, what this is doing is it is acting to cool the housing market. That's great. We need the housing market to cool. Holy banana bread. Look at that. We got another one of them bot heads in here. Get out of here, you banana bread bot head. There we go. Holy cow. That's like two. Like we've gone, it's funny. I used to get bots all the time on my live streams. And now we've probably gone like about probably like 2-3 months without a single bot. And then we get two in one live stream. So that's funny. Where was I? Oh yes, housing prices. So the housing prices with them going down, with things cooling off. Well, that's a great thing for renters, huh? Nope. It's actually the exact opposite. The funny thing is the reason things are cooling down is because people are not willing to buy houses. They're not willing to buy new houses because of these interest rates going up, which means those are people who are staying in the rental market, meaning that we're still increasing demand for rents. We have limited places to rent. So demand is high, supply is low. What does that mean? That means rents are going astronomical. So rents are going up. They're going way up. So that's the thing. It's like if you want to pay rent, you're going up high. Wear a jacket. It's cold up there. So keep in mind, rents are going up. I know, Jordan. That's just, I love robots, but not those robots. Those are not the droids I'm looking for. Just to say. I'm laughing in my head at that one, and that's kind of cool. So just to give you a general idea, so June home sales prices were down 24% over a year, and that, of course, that's part of the whole slowing down that we're seeing. So kind of interesting. We're going to see how that's all going to play out. I think it's going to be very... problem is we just don't have enough people. We have a shortage. We have a labor shortage in construction. We're not building houses fast enough. We're at the point now that it might help if they actually start building some apartment buildings just to try to get some places that people can rent, to get rent under control. So right now, if you live in a place and you're thinking of moving, be very careful. You're probably going to end up paying a lot more than you're paying now if you're a renter. So keep that in mind. So one of these situations where it's like, oh, I'm sick of my landlord. I'm just going to give my notice and go off on my own. That's never a great idea. Or I know I have a few young people who watch the station. Which station? Yeah, this is a station now. That means I'd have to really come up with a lot more content. But if you're young and you're living in your parents' basement, first of all, don't let your parents hear me say this because they'll catch on to the gig. But milk it for a while because the rents out there are going to absolutely kill you. And that's the whole thing. When you're a brand new investor and you're living at home, and you're not, if you're paying rent to your parents, you're not even paying close to market value. So this is that time to get your initial investing off to a great start. Gen X says, where I live in rural Ottawa area, houses are still selling at or above asking. Definitely slowing though compared to last year. Yeah, and I'm in Ottawa, so interesting. I used to do some work for a small small rental company that was out of Stittsville. So that was kind of rural, but I haven't been out that way since I've been back to Ottawa. So I don't know if Stittsville is still as rural as it used to be. I imagine it's grown a bit since I've last been there. They're doing it here and they're still way overpriced. Yeah. And that's a mind. Keep in mind, when somebody's talking about the market going down, so when housing is going down, we're talking about an overall average. So it won't all happen at different prices. Like it won't be the same price everywhere. So you may have some pockets where the price of, like take for example, people way out in rural, maybe those prices are coming down 20%. Maybe places like in Vancouver, the prices are still not really budging. So there's it's usually an average. It's kind of like when they talk about climate change and they're saying the world temperature is going up by 3%. Sure, it may go up by 3%, but that doesn't mean that where you live, it'll be 3% higher. It might mean that some places it might go up 10%, other places it might go down 3%, just because of the whole way it works. And we're not going to get into climate science, at least not, not this one. Now, I did get some interesting things here. The benefits. It's kind of curious. Stats Canada have released some information on all of the pandemic benefits. So do you guys remember the CERB? That very first one that they doled out. It was like $2,000 every 2 weeks. A huge amount of money for a lot of people who were on it. Do you guys know how many people actually took the CERB? Well, we now have the number. The number of people who took that initial benefit were 7,691,950. So that's huge. Now, keep in mind, so every 2 weeks, that meant the government was paying out $1.538 billion every 2 weeks for that CERB. Over the length of time on the CERB, and this is if everyone stayed on the CERB, some people may not have. This data doesn't tell me whether or not that's the case. But if all of those 7.6 million stayed on the CERB, that initial CERB would have cost the government $12.3 billion. So that's a lot of money printing. Now, people then transitioned it onto EI. They didn't give me the EI data, but there was also then that CRB. The CRB was 1,115,575 people. Then there was also the Canada Recovery Sickness Benefit, so the CRSB. 231,456 people were on that. And then the caregiver one, so the CRCB, was 197,335 people. So all in all, that just added up to a lot of money printing. And, you know, that certainly helped our inflation situation that we're in right now. But those were the benefits. Now, they didn't give me, for example, some of the worker benefits, so where the government paid half of people's salaries. So that would have been interesting to get all of that too. So this is just a little taste, and these numbers are huge. So it'd be interesting. I would love to know, and I don't have this information, but I would love to know the final number, the final bottom line, how much the pandemic costs Canada. I'm thinking we're easily approaching, if not breaching past $1 trillion. What you put in everything, all of the different benefits, because keep in mind too, they also paid for all of the vaccines, so that all would get added into that value. So yeah, and that's not even including all of the money from the economic slowdown and all of the money that's lost from the GDP with everybody locked at home. And although it wasn't as bad because online retailers, for example, were going crazy while people were locked at home, in the early part of the pandemic, the number one place you could get a job almost instantly is if you went to any delivery company and said, hey, I want to deliver stuff. You'd have a job. It was amazing. I've never seen people so busy. A friend of mine is in Ottawa who works for FedEx, and that's all he did was complain. You know, the entire pandemic, his Facebook was nothing like, why do people keep ordering heavy stuff? Oh, excuse me. That's from talking for 2 hours straight. 1 hour straight. Why do I think in 2 hours? Anyway, yeah, and see, here's Jordan. He's saying easily over 1 trillion. I'd say minimum 1.2 trillion. You know what, Jordan? I could subscribe to that. And I missed this one. Federal government bubble. We weren't affected at all back in 2008. Yeah. Well, 2008, I'll tell you, I lost my job because of 2008, just to put that on the statement. At the time, I was working at an internet company, and we had expanded into the US just before the bubble burst. we bought a company called Parison, and we sunk a lot into it. And then the financial crisis, the bubble burst, that almost torpedoed the company I was working for. It got to the point that the only way to survive was to outsource almost, excuse me, the only way to survive was to outsource pretty much everything. So we outsourced a lot of it to the Philippines. And even as I remember, even as it was like we were explaining what we needed to do, I knew at that point, like I knew in December of 2007 that my job was probably gone. So, or was it December of 2008? I'm not sure exact year now, but I knew in December that my job would be gone, and by March I was laid off. But I mean, I was given an insane amount of severance, so I didn't mind that so much. But I also lived in Vancouver, so severance, even if even when your severance is big, nothing's too big in Vancouver. So, excuse me. Okay, now we're starting to wind down here. If there's any last questions, just drop them in. Coming up on the channel tomorrow, I have a video on 8 stocks that basically have said, screw you to the bear market. So, oh dear. Good old tickle. You gotta love it when you get a tickle. Hopefully it's not the frigging COVID. That would suck. It would actually be funny. It's like, oh yeah, you make it all the way through the pandemic and then you get it at the end, but I doubt it's that. So coming up, 8 stocks that have basically said screw you to the pandemic, to the bear market. So that one's fun. Actually had a lot of fun making that video, and I think there's some fun moments in that video. So definitely check that out tomorrow. Thursday, we're going to do another deep dive on Sir Royalty. So that's a stock. I touched on it before in another video. They have fantastic dividends, and they look to be a very interesting company. So I'm looking forward to that deep dive. Then we'll be back. Now, yesterday, I did an update on the This Week video. What time tomorrow? 11 a.m. Eastern. I drop all my videos are always dropping at 11 a.m. Eastern, except for my Saturday morning video, which is 9 a.m. Eastern. And yesterday, if you haven't caught it, it's just an update on, do you remember the what if videos I did? Like, what if I could only buy 10 stocks in Canada? What if I could only buy 10 stocks in America? And then, from talking to the community, it was like, hey, we should pit them against each other. That would be fun. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So it's basically them fighting it out in the video. So I'm going to do those well, I said I'd run that for a year. So we'll do that every 3 months. And then when we get to the end of the year, and I'll let you guys decide on whether we keep going. We could keep going just to see, or we could just revisit them once we get out of the bear market. I'd love to see how these stocks recover and see which is the big winner when we're on the other side. So we'll keep that on the back burner. We probably will do that because now the more I think about it, that's just a fantastic idea. Awesome. Yeah. And so what I was going to say is, next week it'll be more of a commentary style on Sunday morning. And I'm not sure yet what we're going to talk about, but something that comes out of the news this week. So, and then we'll be back here again next week for This Week. And hopefully Elon will be back in the news again. I can't see him not being back in the news again, because going an entire week without Elon is absolutely crazy. All right. So everybody, wonderful having you here. It's Sunday. We're depending on where you are. We're all heading into supper. So, if you got a barbecue, definitely grab a barbecue or, that's just awkward. I don't know what to say. Go have some fun. Play some kickball. Play volleyball in the backyard. Hide from your wife if she wants you to mow the lawn. Find something to do. Anyway, it's fantastic having you guys here. I will see you guys again next week, and it will be